I mean, if you run deep in a tournament, final 2 tables, you have a 50 big blind stack, not considering so much ICM, since you're one of the shortest stacks, you have the king 8 suited or king 9 suited there. Vamos. Let's jump into the first spot here. 30 big blinds, ace, queen, 5, under the gun versus button. And we're going to go through some questions. So what is the sizing we want to use here for on an ace queen 5 board where we are under the gun, we're facing a button cold call? Is it more like a high c-bet board, a low c-bet board, or medium c-bet board? I think it's more like a high c-bet board. I think even ace jack can on various runouts go for 3 streets. So yeah, definitely put in a lot of c-bets. I think it's a board where players are playing it a little too passive. As button, do we want to have a raising range here? I mean, I don't really think. Do you really want to raise ace jack? We have some ace queens, but if out of position is bluffing, it has mostly just a gut shot, and we want to keep those hands in there to continue bluffing. So I would say, ooh, let's see the explanation. So under the gun is betting high frequency here, so our strongest ace X is a value raise. We can bluff with some of our lower pairs, gutters, and clear out equity. Probably something like 6-5 suited bluffing against jack 10s. Alright. Yeah, I think it's also League of Mine where in position I'm not raising enough for value. I try to bring people to the streets, and especially on dry boards, yeah, probably ace jacks, ace 10s can raise. The percentage frequency is the frequency. If it's the size of the pot, I would clearly say size of the pot, right? But something also good for yourself or for you to assess yourself. All right, now we have the situation with 25 big blinds. We are button and facing a second barrel with our best second pair. So that's an interesting spot. You flat king queen suited. The board comes ace queen 5. You call a c-bet, or of course second pair, top kicker, backdoor flush draw, turn us to 3 and you face a second barrel. What are we doing as button facing a second barrel with our best second pair? I would say always fold. Why? Because we block a lot of bluffs. We block one value hand, which is ace king. But we block king jack and king 10 and maybe some random bluffs with king 5 suited that try to attack queen jack. So we actually block more bluffs than value. So here, if I have a king, I would prefer continuing with king 9 suited or king 8 suited. Because our opponent, he's not going to bluff or he's not going to value bet king queen with that sizing. He's not going to value bet queen jack or queen 10. So the kicker is irrelevant, but the blocker is relevant. Right? So now if you have king 8, it makes more likely that your opponent has a bluff. But when you have king queen, it's less likely that your opponent has a bluff. Of course, again, if you play against the maniac and he knows he's over bluffing, then you should probably also start calling those very marginal hands that are very often folds. So we're facing a UTG check on the brick turn. Which hands could we consider bluffing for a large sizing? 7s and 6s? Now that's a tricky one. King, jack, king 10. Yeah, I think jack 10 for sure, because against a small sizing, king, jack, king 10 might peel if we give too good of a price. So we want to set jack 10, king jack and king 10 indifferent. I'm not sure about 7s and 6s. Yeah, I think 7s and 6s would make sense as well. You get to fold him like 8s and 9s and 10s. Plus, again, you don't give the good price to king jack and king 10. So, all of them. All right. I wouldn't mind checking king jack here, to be honest. We still have a bit of showdown value. All right. So now we play a river. UTG calls turn. And again, these spots are all 30 big blinds. So 100 big blind, it might have played out different. As you can see, more raising going on in position. If you have a decent top pair, you want to get it in. UTG calls turn, and we head to the river, which rivers are best for button to jam. Yeah, probably 4. right? We'll probably be bluffing if we have like pocket fours. We have some gutters, a 4. Oh, that's tricky as well. So on which cards do we gonna have a jamming range for buttons so we go all in? Which besides the 2, I think the 4. The queen is not good. King and 10, I think. Let's go. Yeah, the queen. I don't think the queen is good. We're not betting a lot of queen X on the turn. Let's see the explanation. Yeah, UTG range is ace X and queen X heavy coming to the river, so they are the worst cards for button to continue. UTG should actually lead queen reverse, as button should even check back a hand like ace jack, which is one of his strongest one pair holdings. On a king or 10, the under the gun player now has a decision, as some of our turn bluffs have now improved. The EV of bluffing is quite close to checking, so we don't need to decide to bluff into villains that won't even fold queen X, let alone some ace X. Yeah, this is a very important point to consider, that you, let's say the river is a king, right? And now you have all your jack 10s. You're not going to be bluffing your king jack, king 10. You check it back because you have showdown value. So you're essentially going to value bet your ace 5, your ace 3, your 2 pairs, and your straights. So let's say if you have 6s and 7s on the river, that would be GTO bluffs. But when your opponent cannot fold an ace 8, right? I mean, imagine the run on the river is a king, and you're under the gun. You c-bet ace 8, turn, you check call again. River is a king. We hate our lives, right? Like, what can our opponent really bluff? So you need to be so creative to understand that when we're in button shoes and we have 6s or 7s, that we actually might want to bluff those. But a recreational player or a bad rec, he's like, I have an ace, I'm top of my range, YOLO, let's call. So that's where you need to be very careful. Against a lot of players, even though I have 7s and understand, oh, this card is good for my range and I should be bluffing a lot, I'm still not bluffing a lot. Yeah, this, by the way, the phrasing of the quizzes today, this is just for the stream. We literally just did it before the stream because we planned, or I planned to play tournaments today. So then I saw there's no WCOOP going on. So what the fuck are we doing today? So then we rearranged things. We said, all right, then let's do a study session. I asked Jeremy, I asked Fernando, hey, can you do some quizzes that I can do on stream? I don't want to do the streams on myself. So usually when we release the quizzes, then we optimize them. We do proper phrasing before we put them to paired. But this is just for, yeah, we just adjusted very short term. And we decided, okay, then let's make a short stick study session as well as playing sit and goes. Yeah, man, great. No, it's great feedback. Don't worry. I love it. It's good. And of course, you also get more points the faster you respond, right? So at the beginning, you also get the we can see which ranges were being used. So raise first in, this is the range. We're playing against the raise first in player, and this is our flatting range, 3-betting 5%. All right, then. So now, same spot. We are under the gun now, playing against button, ace 8-5. Is this a medium c-bet? So in terms of frequency, are we c-betting around 50% of the time? Are we c-betting less than 30% of the time? Or are we c-betting more than 80% of the time? I would say this is rather a low c-bet frequency board because we have a lot of hands that have very poor equity if called. So something like queen jack, king jack. So for example, ace 10-5 would be much better because our very heavy Broadway heavy range has automatically a gut shot. So I would say it's less than 4. It's either medium c-bet or low c-bet, but definitely not high c-bet. All right, still medium c-bet. Then yeah. So GTO aside, which of the following hands should we actually call versus small size? Yeah, this is probably also a spot where the imposition player then is doing a lot of stabbing because we have a lot of hands that, yeah, if we have a pot control at ace 9, ace 7, it's probably the best hands we can have. But apart from that, we have like 9s, 10s, kings, queens, maybe a king, queen, king, jack with backdoor flush. So as you can see already on the flop, our range is fairly weak, which makes it really attractive to start for the button betting a lot. Okay, we're pairs. Of course, we're going to call our pairs. Yeah. So in GTO, we should be calling Jack 10, Jack 9. And this is an excellent spot to understand the difference between GTO. Like in GTO, this guy is supposed to start stabbing a lot, like probably 40 to 50% of the time. But in reality, people are not going to be so creative. Like if they have King Jack or Jack 10 with backdoor flush draw, they might bet it sometimes, but not as often as they're supposed to. So then floating with King Jack or Jack 10, which is already very marginal and close to break even, maybe has even neutral EV, becomes in reality a minus EV float. So yeah, we should probably just continue with pairs and not being afraid of being exploited. Which of the following turns are best for UTG to barrel after button calls flop? So I think that's a good one. So which of the following turns are good for UTG to barrel after the button call? So now we go into button under the gun's perspective. He c-bets and now he wants a second barrel. So again, like you have to understand the under the gun player's range is very Broadway heavy, right? Like Jack 10s, Queen 10s, 10 9s, Jack 10s. So that means a Broadway card where he's going to pick up additional equity. So I go with Broadway card and 9x. Let's think about it. So why is Ace-X and 5x good to second barrel? Probably because for the button player, here's the thing in general with paired cards, even with the top card pairs. It makes it less likely for us to have a hand, but the button player will also raise some ace-x some of the time, right? So it's more likely that we will have an ace, and since there is an ace, right, there are two aces on the flop, it's less likely for the in-position player to have. So that's why it makes it actually quite good for us to continue barreling and just fold out our opponent's floats, king, queen, king, jack, maybe queen, jack, jack 10, 10, 9, and none of these cards are on the board, so it's more likely. 9x I would have thought would be good for us because our queen jacks, jack 10s improved. We're gonna start checking jack 9s and 10 9s, right? We're not gonna be bluffing those, so we don't need to pick from those hands since they have showdown value. Yeah, and Broadway cards. Yeah, I would have picked Broadway cards and 9x. There are not many two pairs. Pulverizer. Because which two pairs? Like we both have ace 9s. Your opponent is going to improve to two pairs, but so are we. So there's only 9-8 suited. It's very much irrelevant. Yes, he has 7-6 suited. That's true. But it's also only 4 combos. But again, I might have overvalued the 9 here for sure. Yeah, but Jack 10, we also have Jack 10. Like, guys, also, just because he has Jack 10, when we have that as well, it's irrelevant. We also have 9-9. Like, we can easily protection bet 9-9. We also have 9-9. We have 9-9. We can c-bet 9-8. We can c-bet ace-9. So he has it as well as we have. So the only advantage he has over us on the 9 is the 7-6. So turn 5, which size should we continue as UTG? I think small. Or we want to start being more. No, we actually want to start being more polarized, right? Yeah, because now our ace jack just becomes so strong. We probably want to be either polar or check. Yeah, polar and big. I think these two sizings. We just continue small to attack villain's floats. Remember that if villain does not have these floats in his range. Yeah, this is where I might play a bit more exploitative, where I know that might not be floating so wide, so if I have my ace king, I just fire like a pot-sized bet or 7 big blinds, and then I can jam the river. Oh, I really sucked in the spot. The river is an 8 in diamonds, and UTG continues small. Considering population, what hands would we bluff catch as button? Yeah, I mean ace-x. I don't see any point why we should bluff catch 10s or 9s here. Even weak ace-x could potentially be a fold. This is a highly underbluffed spot, and we don't need to get fancy even versus small sign. This is hard to find bluffs. Chances are UTG doesn't have many. Yeah, I agree. Like, this is a spot I would barely bluff, to be honest. Let's not talk about this one. Just thinking which. Let's do small blind versus hijack. We want to prepare for S&Gs later. Yeah, you can see here small blind versus hijack. Wow, okay, interesting. I would have. So it prefers calling over jamming for 20 bigs. I would have thought that king jack off, you know, hijack late position, 20 bigs. It's an excellent rejam. C for 15 big blinds. Wow. But definitely any pair. Right, we still have fold equity with 15 big blinds. See where's cutoff. Yeah, versus cutoff it gets incredible loose. King 6. And also flatting really wide. Imagine you're 20 big blinds in the small blind and cutoff opens. I think it's a big league of a lot of players. And you can also see, this is, I remember where I flat from the small blind with 6-5 and 7-6 here, and Ben, and so many people are like, oh Ben, aren't we too short to flat those? But I mean, if we look into small blinds raise first in range, cutoffs raise first in range, it is very Broadway heavy, right? So the 6-5, 4-5, 7-6 suited, they actually perform quite well. Definitely has been a big league of mine as well for a long time. I was not defending my small blind enough. No, we're small blind facing raise first in versus. Let's take cutoff. No, so paired. If you have any questions around paired, like is it part of Tournament Masterclass or not, we have a support channel. But just to give you a quick overview, it's a standalone subscription. You get access to ranges, you get access to the same as you can see it on the screen right now. We have a free version where you get access to not so many ranges, but you still get access to some ranges, also access to some quizzes. You can hear whatever spot you want to train, do automated quizzes. You can train entire tree, you can train selected ranges, practice. You can create your own quizzes. There's even video content in there. So we're working a lot on the user friendliness and yeah, simplifying it as much as possible. So enough of the sales pitch. So for 20 big blinds, really queen 8 suited. Wow, it's even a full frequency defend. It's not like sometimes you should defend it. And even with 15 big blinds, like there's still some flatting. And this is what I mean. Like it's not. So many people say, oh yeah, you know, you have less than 50 big blinds or 10 big blinds, like it's all in or fold. No, it's not. Like, you know, you probably might have felt that king 9 suited from the small blind, 15 big blinds, cut off. It should be an all in or fold, right? But it's actually not. To me, I remember it always felt awkward folding king 9 suited. Like for me, it was either jam or fold. And when I didn't want to jam, I was like, yeah, fold. But you can see it's a call. Like even king 8 suited, totally fine to call. Queen 8 suited. Yeah, and jamming a lot. Like, and this is, I think, where a lot of people also struggle in deep runs. I mean, if you run deep in a tournament, finding 2 tables, you have a 50 big blind stack, not considering so much ICM. Since you're one of the shortest stacks, you have the king 8 suitor or king 9 suitor there. Vamos. Let's look at against button. Now as a practice, what would you play against button? If you compare, and this, by the way, how I study, what I really like to do, I like to compare 2-3 different ranges to see the impact. And when I see the impact or when I see the changes, it's so much easier to visualize. It's so much easier to understand how playing against different positions has an impact on our own range. Yeah, so these are purely GTO ranges. Tournament Masterclass, I sat down, I go over every single range and I'm adjusting, because I think some of these spots in the Tournament Masterclass you will find different ranges, because I believe in against population sometimes we even want to rejam more or we even want to rejam less, and I adjusted them depending on my own database research, what I think people are calling, what people are open raising, and what I've seen from low stakes, mid stakes, and high stakes, what I think are the perfect ranges to play. These are literally just GTO ranges, right? And you still need to adjust them. But it gives you a hint on how wide you can play. So, of course, the Tournament Masterclass ranges are way more valuable. And also, you have more ranges in the Tournament Masterclass than you have in paired. Paired is, the main focus is on the quizzes, where we want you to teach the understanding of poker and not just provide you with some GTO solves, you see some frequencies. So even when I'm providing the quizzes, and I always sit down and do the quizzes, I always write an explanation why we want to do certain things. So you really understand, oh, okay, why do we want to bluff here? Why do we want to not bluff here in this very spot? All right, let's check versus button. Oh, it's actually not that wide. Just a few more king X, all the ace X. Wow, that's interesting. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's not that much wider. But you can see how relevant the blockers become. We get way more aggressive with the offsuited ace X, right? Like literally any ace we gonna jam. Sometimes mix in some traps with aces, but very little calling. Like, just the light green. But it's okay. And it's very interesting to see that the ace-X are more viable. Sorry, 15 big blinds. Yeah, also versus 20 big blinds. We actually do some very little 3-betting as well against the button, because his range is so full of crap. And then we go bananas with the offsuited. But if you look, for example, for the button raise first in range, for 15 big blinds, you see, first of all, lots of jamming, of course. And still a lot of limping. Right, you're supposed to play around 40% VPIP, 40%, but 1/3 of the time you're limping. And I think most of the players are not doing that. They're still playing 35 to 40% of their hands, but they're playing raise first only. And then jamming becomes so much more attractive. Like here, Queen 9 off, Jack 9 off, I see people more often raising than limping. So our rejamming range here that we have just seen is built on the fact that actually the button is not raising a lot. We're still reshoving. Yeah, exactly. Nobody's doing this limping. So if we go back, what is our adaptation from small blind facing a raise first in from the button for 15 big blinds? It's shoving your suited kings. I would expand here my probably any suited king, lots of the queen 8, jack 8, 10 8 suited, all these hands. If I would now try to really identify what do I want to rejam in this spot, I would need to take HRC, plug in the spot, give my opponent the range that I think they're raising first in, and then I get a range I get to rejam with. And I can tell you I did this already. It's very, very wide. I wouldn't be surprised if even the off-suited king X are turning into profitable jams. And if you think someone is not rejamming so wide, especially if you're deep in a tournament, of course you can open really wide, right? And this is how you start understanding what kind of range to play when, let's say, you have an average base, and how far you can push it when you have someone that is too tight or too aggro, right? And you do that for 15, 20, and 30 big blinds for late position battles for a couple of days, and then you focus maybe more on earlier position versus blinds. And then, of course, it takes some time, like it takes weeks and months. But then after 5-6 months, you can solve like up until 50 big blinds, at least having it as a rough idea. That's totally sufficient. You don't need to know every hand, but you have an idea what's your baseline, what's your game plan against the population. And then you also have an idea how far you can push it, how wide you can adjust against tighter opponents, and how tight you're supposed to play against looser opponents. And this is where I think GTO preflop really helps you with, but you still need to put in the work to do some further research in order to. And this is, by the way, where I've been doing rejams with 10-4 suited, because I know if I see someone opening really wide and I get 10-4 suited in the blinds, like, let's send it. I remember 2 years ago on a 25k final table, 10k final table, where I was even the mid-stacks, I rejammed 7-6 suited. I knew it's good. All right, I jammed into ace king. Of course I get a lot of messages. Wow, what an ICM punt, right? But I know those people never have seen any sims or did a more deeper study on how we're supposed to play preflop. And I think this as a warm-up is totally sufficient. Like, this is not super. Usually I even keep it lighter.